Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're here. And if you want your company to be found online and for people to find your website more easily, you are in the right place. Today, we're looking at how to get your SEO and your content right so that more of your prospects and customers can find you. Because we all have websites, right? And sometimes we feel like, people can't find us. So today is awesome because Teresa is super pro on the nuts and bolts of SEO, and Bob is super pro on the content bit of SEO. So welcome, and hi, Bob. How are you doing?
Fantastic, Cindy. Thanks so much for hosting this event today. I really appreciate it.
So glad you're here, Bob Decker. And Teresa Hardy, hi, how are you?
Hi everybody. Great to see everybody here. Looking forward to talking with you.
So glad you guys are here. So today you're going to find out how to get your website found more easily, so more prospects find you. You're going to find out exactly what nuts and bolts to take care of around your SEO so your website gets found more easily. And you'll find out exactly how to change up your content to improve how your website is found. And Teresa and Bob put together an awesome checklist that's super actionable that you're going to be able to take away at the end and apply to your website. So you can literally by this afternoon have made some changes and improved what's happening in your business. Does that sound good to everybody? Woohoo! All right, and feel free to unmute and have your cameras on because we want to be super interactive. Bob, let's get right into it. Let's talk about SEO tactics right away. You had a super interesting story that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, well, most of I'd say the majority of SEO challenges that I work on involve somebody that has a decent website but they are wanting to expand into different markets, or they have a product that has different applications from their traditional applications. And they're wondering, what do they need to do from an SEO perspective to make that successful? And one of the first times this came up for me several years ago and kind of turned SEO kind of into a way of life for me was several years ago when I had a client that was introducing a new product category, and they were concerned that people weren't finding them when they were searching for this product type on Google. And so some of the people in the company thought, well, this is just because we're too small. And it was a really small company at that point. It's much larger now. All the competitors with this product type were much, much bigger companies. But I didn't really believe that they had to be big to get noticed in SEO. So I did some research into how the competitors were talking about this product type on their websites. And I find out that my client wasn't really using the industry standard terminology that the competitors were. So what we did was to work with the company's webmaster, who happened to be Teresa, to go through all the pages on the client's website about this category of product. And we changed the way they were referred to so it would align better with the way the whole industry refers to them. And the other thing that we did was that anywhere that the page tags were emphasizing the part number, we changed that around. So instead it would lead with the generic term for the product instead of the company's part number. And so with those changes made, it took about a week, and bam, there they are on the first page of search results, and that's where they still are. So that experience, which was so simple, really convinced me that the SEO process doesn't have to be magical or anything. There's a lot of just common sense about the content, and that if you refer to things, don't be eccentric. Refer to things the way that other companies refer to them, and that makes a huge difference.
I love that, Bob. You're diving right into the competitive comparative analysis that we include in that discovery and findability process. Excuse me. And I too have examples of those kinds of things. That was a great project that we work on together. And another one that has to do with the digital footprint of a company that we always look at in that first review process is a company that isn't coming up in front. Their content is showing up on the first page, but it's not their domain. And that was really confusing. Turns out the developer had never turned off the indexing. And that means that both the development site and the production site were being indexed, and the development site was getting out front. Well, it started first, so it got out front. So it's important to have the indexing of a site, and that has to do with the sitemap submission to Google set up correctly. And I love this because I'm going to pass it back to Bob, who has a similar story about indexing.
Do tell, Bob. Let's hear it.
No, it was very similar. And I think what this points to is that, you know, it's not just the content is really important, but sometimes you really have to look at the code, which is, you know, very much where Teresa is an expert. But you know, anybody can look at the code. And I had a, you know, consumer facing company client that they had just finished their website, and so they wanted to see, you know, they wanted an assessment of how their SEO was going. And so, you know, I looked at, you know, their website, which was, you know, really nicely set up and everything, and it had all the content in the right places. But when I went onto Google to try to find them, I could find lots of references to them on other sites, but not their own site wasn't showing up anywhere. And so I just, you know, usually I don't focus on the code, but in this case I did. And there was that do not index tag that Teresa was just mentioning. And somebody had forgotten to turn that off at the end of the web development process. Once it was turned on, then they became easily discoverable. And so everything was good from that point on for them.
I should mention
that client. Oh, I'm sorry, Teresa.
Sorry, I just want to put one little tidbit in there because we talk about that little flag. Both of those sites were WordPress sites where you have one little button. If you're doing something outside of WordPress, the process is a little bit different, and you're actually submitting and requesting the index from the search engines. Go ahead, Cindy.
Oh, it's all good. Bob, is that the client that we were working on together? It was kind of like a two-person publishing house?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
And, you know, it also, you know, proves again that, you know, you don't have to be a big company to get good organic search results.
Nice, nice. I love that. Okay, so if you're just joining us, thank you for being here. We are looking at what to do to make your website easy to find online. And we're looking at both nuts and bolts, you know, kind of like the mechanics of it, and looking at the content of it. So, and because we're here on the live platform, please have your camera on and you can jump in, and we're going to have some QA time at the end, which is great. So stay with us. And we also are going to have a checklist for you coming up soon. That's a really sweet takeaway. So Bob, I wanted to ask you what the main pain points are of clients that come to you. I mean, you gave that great story right there, but can you kind of just give us a framework of like, you know, these are the top issues that we see?
Yeah, you know, it's that they can't be discovered because they have a new product, or they're having problems with the new product being discovered, or they feel like, you know, their competitors are doing so much better than they are. And so, you know, when I'm working on a discoverability project, where I like to start is not with the website really, or with Google, or with analytics, but, you know, with a conversation with the client in which they're telling me, you know, what their business is and who it's for. And the interesting thing about this, going through that with them, is that there's frequently some difference, sometimes a major difference, between what the client says it makes and what the client's website says it makes. And part of what we want to do in a discoverability review is to help resolve that. So the people who run the company aren't describing it in one way and the website is describing it in another. You know, the other thing that we often run into is that different pages on the very same website often end up referring to the same product or solution in different ways. For example, a company might refer to, you know, a product that they've just announced in a press release, and in one way, and then it's completely different on the landing page for the product. And so we work to resolve things like that, because that just helps so much for SEO purposes, because SEO, search engines like consistency. Do you find that also, Teresa?
Oh, yes, a long list of things that in what you just said. There is a technical value in search engine optimization to the links between pages. The site is a narrative, and it all has to tell the whole story. And that's what Google's looking for. And it gets smarter every year. And with every algorithm update, it gets smarter with how to measure that with the words that are being spread and the code. So that's why I look under the hood for things like that. I'll give a good example of that is the, if you want to know more, click here. That's not a good link. Click on the page for that product and use the product name in the link. Little things like that in the content make a world of difference.
And I guess another example would be that, you always name photographs with what they're showing. And then you have an alt text for all photographs that if the, that kind of describes what the photograph is showing, rather than just, say image and a number.
Right, and there's two powerful reasons to use that alt tag. One is accessibility. It depending on your target audience, who's actually reading this, and they could possibly be using a screen reader. So you're appealing to accessibility as well as the search engines with those alt tags.
So if I get this right, it seems like there's sort of maybe 4-ish instances we're talking about here. I'm sure there's tons more, but there's the people who have a new product who are looking to be found. There's the people who have a brand new website and they don't know why people aren't finding it. There's the folks who have a decent website, but they're maybe trying to get into another market or doing something different and need more SEO to make it work better. And then there's sort of the people who are like, almost like squirrel. I saw ads that I should be doing Google AdWords. I saw info that I should be doing more Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. Wow. And you're dealing with all 4 of those kind of, I don't know, personas or types of clients on a day-to-day basis. Does that sound right to you?
It does sound right. And they all have one thing in common. They all want to grow the business, and they need an external perspective to see why. What does it take for you to grow your business? And that's why my wish today is that everybody takes something actionable out of here. And that's why we put together the PDF that we'll share shortly. And on that is questions for you to answer. Is it actionable? Do you understand it? Can you do something about this to help you grow? And to understand where you stand now and what you need to do for your next step.
Right. And so Kristen's going to put the link for that in the chat for you guys so you can have access to it and go crazy. It's super great. Bob, can I ask you a question? What's the first thing you want to know about a client when you're improving their SEO? I know you've got like a whole set kind of recipe for that.
I do. I think the thing that I keep on coming back to is the elevator pitch, and what is your company and who is it for, and in the simplest language. There's a lot of questions out there about how Google is evolving, and what's the next version of the algorithm going to be like, and what do we need to do to ensure that our site is ready for that. And the general story arc of the Google algorithm is toward making everything more human. And so making it, doing mechanical things like having a list of keywords. Sometimes people used to do that back in the day because they would have a whole list of keywords on their page, and then an attempt to be sure that anybody searching under any of those words would turn up. And Google has gotten smarter than that. They want to encounter, they give you you get demerits for not sounding human, and you get promoted for the more you sound human and the more it makes sense. And so think very hard about what your elevator pitch is. And your elevator pitch is not your boilerplate. It's what you could say in a hurry in 25 words or less about what you make and who it's for.
I love the human to human piece of that too. And we specialize in marketing automation. And in that, we're always looking to make everything more human. So everything gets written in first person as if I'm writing just to you, Bob. And all the AI out there can sense if it's written in first person and is personal, and that helps on email deliverability as well as being found on a website. The human bit that you're talking about there, I love that you brought that up. So you also talked about wanting to know who the company's competitors are and some other things like that. You've got a sweet list there.
I do, and that's a really major part of a discoverability review is, we want to know how the competitors. Well, we want to know who the competitors are, and so that's why we start with the meeting with the head of the company or the head of marketing, because we don't want to guess who that is. It's really important. Who do they perceive as their competitors? And it's interesting that sometimes there's a difference between who they perceive as competitors and who comes up in search results as competitors. And it's really important to distinguish those and address that problem, because you want to be with your actual competitors, not with the people that Google thinks are your competitors. And sometimes, if you're with the wrong group of competitors, then that's something that needs to be fixed, because that means that, people are not going to the right place when they're searching. You were nodding, Teresa. Have you kind of run into that as well?
So many great examples. I was going through analytics data for a client because she didn't understand why she was getting this traffic, but she's not converting the traffic. And it turned out when we did the analytics review that the traffic was caused by a place in New York, and she was a California brick and mortar. And so it gave new focus and direction, something actionable that she could go adjust in how she was promoting her business.
Exactly. I wanted to sorry, go ahead.
I was going to launch right into what you were talking about with the importance of the words and pulling that together, because one of the reasons that I was so happy that you wanted to do this today was because of the combined value of the words and the code, that part under the hood, that I'd like to talk about with search engine optimization, which is structured data. Because the knowledge panel on the right hand side, the only way to get that is if I'm working hand in hand with the content writer, so that the words on the page are selectable for me to put in this structured piece of data that I then insert into the code of the page, and Google digests it, decides whether they like it or not, and we earn the knowledge panel. I don't know, you can mention.
So you're talking about the thing that comes up on some search results, not others, and it's kind of like it almost looks like a encyclopedia entry. And
well, Wikipedia earns that space a whole lot of the time when it's not blank. So but yeah, it does.
It doesn't have to be Wikipedia. It could be your website.
Yes, exactly. So Google My Business, which is for local search, comes up there on the right sidebar. I do it quite often when I type in my favorite restaurant, because I don't have their phone number in my contact list. So I put it in there, and I don't go straight to their website. I go over there to the right sidebar and click there for the phone number. But for a product, which is different than a business, you can earn that sidebar by adding product data to the pages if you have the right content in the pages. And it takes a little bit more, but we can talk about that.
Right.
I love that. Now, who in the meeting here, who has checked to see if there's product, their company comes up on the sidebar? Is that something Google My Business, it does apply to equipment manufacturers as well as newspapers. And I could see we got a lot of different people on the call today. So just let us know in the chat, or even indicate to us during the Q&A, we can all unmute and chat a little bit. So is that something you guys have done?
Yeah. Do you know what a knowledge panel is? And if you see that blank spot over there on the right-hand side, when you put in a product specifically, that's a missed opportunity. And I have a great example of a client that was trying to earn search ranking. And he was going at it with a partner, the distributor. The distributor had the authoritative domain name. In other words, the distributor had the domain name with the product in the name, and he had the business name, and he was never going to get first slot. I said, give it up. You're just not going to get it. Go for the right sidebar. And he has since, after following the recipe that I described to him and going through several sessions of what you have to do with that, he got the content going, got the authoritative links coming back in, earned his sidebar.
That's
So
fantastic.
awesome.
Yeah.
So awesome. No, you guys are so pro and you have so much experience. We all work with small to medium-sized businesses on their marketing in various ways. And Bob, what do you feel like the most important thing is that you've learned from an actual experience in working with someone on their SEO?
From an actual experience,
Yeah,
I think
real life.
it's what I've been saying is that you don't have to be a huge company, even a big company, to have a major impact in SEO. And to give you an example of that, just last year at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, one of my clients realized that one of their sensor products would be an ideal thing to use in ventilators. But they had never talked about it that way. They had never even mentioned, respiratory care as an application on their website. So it was the end of March. We needed to act quickly. And so what I did for them is first we put together some content for their website on how you could use this particular product to make ventilators more reliable, which is true about the product. And for that, I just put together a very quick and dirty white paper, just a couple of pages that just had all the right words in there. And so we got that up on the website, and then we retooled the upper level of their product family pages to include one specifically for the ventilator application. And third, we sent out a press release announcing that this existing product was ready to ship and ideal for ventilator applications to make ventilators more reliable. So I think maybe 48 hours went by after that press release went out. I don't know if it was even 48 hours, but they had, within that time frame, they were conducted by one of the big car manufacturers, which had been drafted by the United States government to create ventilators as part of a Defense Authorization Act thing. And a couple of weeks after that, they had the largest order in the company's history. So that just, proved it to me for all time that, you just follow these kind of basic rules and you can get stunning results.
I love that. That is such a great example. Stunning results. Who doesn't want that? Teresa, I bet you've got something you can talk with us about the most important thing you've learned from working with clients. You probably have too many to pick from. Just give us one sweet example.
I do, but I'd like to first look at the fundamental debug process, and I want to make sure that everybody catches that as in all of our examples where we've described a problem and a way to get the solution. And one thing, and Bob's done it, and the stories that I've described, we've done the same thing where we're looking at those key elements. And what I've learned is that it's a moving target. And I'm sure that everybody that's studying SEO realizes that. How do I possibly keep up? And I want to tell you a little bit about how I do that, is that I have a spreadsheet that I've developed over the years of doing this that is a launch plan or a discoverability review to make sure that all of those items are done to be findable. And it's a constantly changing ecosystem. I'll give you an example of that. Apple Maps. How many of you have, if you have a local business, how many of you have listed on Apple Maps? That's a new thing. Whoa, whoa, yay. Okay, so it's very easy to get blindsided. There's a lot of things in the press right now about Google and their new core vitals. Don't panic. That's what I want to say to you. It's good to be looking at those things, but how much time can you really spend figuring it all out? And if you build a solid site that's semantically correct, that's good page load speeds, and that's why there's a bullet in there in that spreadsheet, in that PDF for you to look at it. But when you look at that, don't forget to look at your competitors too, because everybody's in the same boat you are. Google's been doing this same thing for years. They did it first with keywords that Bob mentioned earlier. Then keywords were abused, so they stopped looking at keywords. And it was, the big question was, well, what about the description? Is it worth doing? My answer is yes, I have tested this. The description might not get you higher in your rankings because they don't want it to be abused, but it does show up in the search engine results. Okay, so it is worth optimizing those words. So as far as the things that are in the latest news blasts about largest contentful paint, first input delay, cumulative layout shift, don't panic. It's something that you have to focus on the common sense of a good website first, and then yeah, you can use the measurement tools, and there's a whole bunch of different measurement tools out there, and a few that you would never use that I use because it gives me actionable results. I'll stop there. I can go on a bit. You're right.
Oh, I love the common sense approach to what you're saying, because,
Yes.
you know, that first contentful paint that shows up in the Google page speed, and Kristen's going to throw that link for you in the chat, by the way. If you go to the info that Teresa and Bob put together, and they said it's a PDF. Actually, there's a website or a web page. And so go to that URL. You'll see a link in there that says go here to check your page speed. It's not linked, we'll fix it. But anyways, we'll put the link in the chat for Google page speed. If you guys have any questions, like you want to know how to get that sidebar or how to whatever, just fill in that form there. You can have a quick no obligation call with Teresa and Bob to just go over that. But even better, or also, is meet us afterward in the breakout rooms, because this platform, we've got this live platform that's so awesome. So we have breakout rooms after, and each of us will be in a breakout room. You can come talk to us. But to circle back to your common sense thing, I totally love that, because when I think website stuff, you guys are the SEO pros. When I think website, I think I want the website to say who you're for, what you solve, what you want them to believe, and what you want them to do next. Those are the 4 things I care about. Bob knows. He's like, oh my gosh, Cindy says that every time. She's a freaking broken record. But those are the things I love, because that's the common sense bit that we do with our clients. And like, once they get to the site, what are you hoping that they do next? What are you hoping they learn? So those are my 4 biggies. So I totally love that. I'm wondering if we should go to questions in a minute, but do you guys have things that you want to hit? You know, we've kind of talked about if you've got a new website, a new product, what about AdWords, how to deal with that stuff. We've kind of myth busted the, like, you don't have to be so big to be found, and talked about consistent terminology, those types of things, keeping things human, and structured data. So those are some of the key takeaways I've got, plus that PDF or that web page that Kristen put the link for in the chat that's got a checklist you can do right now. But do you guys have something to add to that before we go to questions with everybody?
I'd love to see if anybody is willing to say, when was the last time you looked at analytics? Do you know that you have analytics, first of all? And I'm betting that y'all have analytics, but when was the last time you looked at them? And are you lost and confused? Do you need
I looked at those last week. I like to look at them week to week just because I do. But does anybody want to unmute and just comment on your thoughts about analytics? We're going to move into the questions and answers part of today. And then we're going to wrap after this and go to the breakout rooms. But now we're in QA. So everybody unmute and let's talk about it. So who looks at Google Analytics? Anybody?
I do. I just looked at it the other day, and actually I love it. I'm kind of a junkie looking at that stuff because I develop products. I have a little Etsy store. You know, it's something I love to do. It's not my main income earner, but what I love to do is to look at the content on my site, all of my blog posts, and the articles that get the most traffic. I look at how can I turn that into a product? How can I create something that somebody would want to buy on Etsy that's handmade or along those lines? So it's fascinating to me. It gets my creative juices flowing.
That's great to hear. So many times I get people that tell me that they're lost and they have no idea what it means or where to sort through it. So sounds like you've got some experience there. That's great.
Who else looks at Google Analytics, or is there anyone terrified to look at it and want to jump on into our breakout rooms afterward and get a little info? Any questions, comments about Google Analytics? Not to be scary, but feel free to unmute and, and jump in.
I'll take the opportunity to ask another question. Who has a pain point that we haven't mentioned?
Love that. Right. We talked about, I have a new product and want to get found. I have a new website. I have an old website. What else? What are you thinking? Hey, I'm not those things. I have this issue. Who has something else they want to talk about? And you guys can pop it in the chat if you want to. If you feel shy, you can pop it in the chat, or you can unmute, whatever's all good for you. All right, I am kind of thinking we should head over to our breakout rooms. Did everybody get the link? Have you guys all clicked that link to the free resource that Teresa and Bob put together? Did everybody get that? That free resource is super sweet and it's very actionable, and you could just have a coffee or whatever beverage you want and work through that. And by later today, you would literally have an improvement in your website. All right, well, let me thank everybody for coming. And then Kristen's going to put the link in the chat here that will just take you back to that first page you were on when you got here. And you'll see a breakout room for Teresa and one for Bob and one for me. And just come talk to us and we'll just chat. And I know one of you guys had a specific question about how to get on that sidebar. Go to Teresa's breakout room. She will help you right now and it will be really fun. So thank you, everybody, and see you in the breakout rooms. Anything to add, Teresa and Bob?
No, just thank you so much, Cindy. I just love how, you're the greatest webinar host ever, and it's just been a pleasure working with you on this.
I agree. I'm honored to be here and thrilled to see that folks showed up with their questions. And I would go, and I'd like to summarize real quickly that it's content. It's the foundation to serve up that content, and the invitation you're sending out to the search engines, whether the registration with the search engines or the inbound links and the directory listings. And those are the three things that I want to make sure that everybody's taking away from here, as well as that list that you can go through and do a little analysis on your website to figure out what your next step is in your growth plan.